Imagine walking into your favorite coffee shop and being told your money isn't valid today. Not because your account is empty, but because you bought too much red meat this week. Sounds impossible, right? Now rewind. No one banned cash overnight. They just made it harder to find. ATMs quietly disappeared. Card-only signs became the norm. And then came the apps. Fast, clean, connected directly to the central bank. It all felt like progress, but behind the convenience, a different system was taking shape. A system where money doesn't just move, it obeys. And for the first time in history, your balance might depend on your behavior. For decades, cash was a constant. It didn't care who you were, where you lived, or what you believed. It worked, everywhere, for everyone. And then, quietly, it began to fade. No declaration, no emergency law, just small changes, so incremental they barely made the news. A single branch closing in a quiet town, then another. ATM networks consolidating, maintenance that never ended. And one day, a corner shop quietly adds a sticker, "No cash accepted." You tell yourself it's a fluke until you start seeing it everywhere. By 2024, over 60% of urban retailers in Europe reported going cashless. In the US, some banks reduced in-person services by half. And across Latin America and Southeast Asia, QR code payments from government-linked apps exploded in adoption faster than anyone predicted. Why? Efficiency, they said, safety, hygiene, innovation. But something deeper was happening beneath the upgrades. You see, digital payments used to be a choice. Now they're the rails, and the new rails don't run on anonymity. Here's the real shift. When you tap a card or scan a code, you're not just paying, you're leaving a trace, a timestamp, a location, a pattern. And someone is watching that pattern. Not necessarily to harm you, but to model you, to design policies, to target offers, to optimize control. This isn't paranoia, it's policy. In mid-2022, the Bank for International Settlements published a report titled The Future Monetary System. In it, they outlined the architecture of a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, programmable, trackable, and, crucially, subject to constraints. Expiration dates, purchase restrictions, automated taxation, all built into the money itself. China was the first to go live with it, distributing e-yuan via government lotteries and festivals. Nigeria followed, launching the e-naira. The European Central Bank is testing a digital euro. And in the US, the Federal Reserve's FedNow system is quietly laying the infrastructure without calling it a CBDC just yet. Meanwhile, Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum speak openly. A digital currency, they argue, is part of a more resilient and inclusive post-COVID economy, one that leaves no one behind. But here's the paradox. When cash disappears, everyone is included, because there's no opt-out. And inclusion in this context doesn't mean access, it means alignment. Think about it. With programmable money, a government or any authority could issue stimulus that must be spent within 30 days, or block purchases that contradict a sustainability score, or offer bonuses for behavior considered socially desirable. At first, these features are marketed as benefits, rewards, incentives. They feel like choice until they're not. Now pause. Ask yourself, when was the last time you paid with cash? When was the last time you saw someone under 30 use a bill? The transition didn't need force. It just needed a design that made the alternative obsolete. Because the most powerful systems don't demand your compliance. They make you forget you had a choice. And if that sounds too abstract, consider this. Sweden, often seen as the most cashless society on Earth, had to pass emergency laws in 2020 to guarantee access to physical money because banks were phasing it out faster than regulators could react. The European Commission followed in 2023 with a proposal: CBDCs must coexist with cash. But even in that sentence, you can feel the anxiety. Coexistence means nothing if one side has the momentum and the funding. Because here's what they don't say: you don't have to outlaw cash, you just have to make it impractical. And so the era of frictionless finance has a cost. The friction was your last layer of freedom. The Great Reset doesn't need to install CBDCs by decree. All it needs to do is normalize the conditions that make them feel inevitable. And that normalization is already underway. But what makes programmable money truly different, what separates it from everything before, isn't the tech, it's the rules baked into the code. And to understand that, we have to look at what happens when money stops being neutral, because the next generation of currency comes with conditions. For centuries, money had one job: to represent value. It didn't judge, it didn't expire, it didn't ask questions. But programmable currency changes that. A central bank digital currency, or CBDC, isn't just money in digital form. It's code, and code can carry conditions. That means your money might only work for certain items, in certain places, within certain time limits, or according to behavior scores you don't control. This isn't a theory, it's public policy. The Bank of England has outlined programmable features for a digital pound. The European Central Bank has studied spending caps and merchants restrictions. The IMF calls it tiered access, all framed as innovation, as safety, as inclusion. But let's be clear, this is not how cash behaves. In 2022, Nigeria rolled out the e-naira, but adoption stalled. People saw it for what it was: monitored money. And when the government imposed strict withdrawal limits to force digital use, the backlash was immediate. For many, it wasn't about resisting change, it was about survival. In China, the digital yuan was tested with expiration dates. Use it in 14 days or lose it. Spend it here, but not there. All in the name of stimulus efficiency. This isn't malfunction, it's design. The logic is simple. If you can control how money is spent, you can shape behavior. And that brings the Great Reset into view. At the World Economic Forum, programmable money is discussed as a tool for a responsible economy, for sustainability, for agile policy delivery. All noble ideas until they become mandatory. Because once your wallet carries code from the central bank, it's not just a wallet, it's a rule book. And the rules, they're written by people you didn't vote for. In 2021, Augustin Carstens, head of the Bank for International Settlements, said it clearly: with a CBDC, the central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations. Not shared control, absolute. So the issue isn't whether programmable money is technically possible, it's whether it becomes politically irresistible. And when it does, what happens to the freedom we once had in every bill, every coin, every untraceable transaction? Because if money no longer behaves like money, maybe we should stop calling it that. To understand who's designing this new system and what their real objectives are, we have to go deeper into the network behind the reset. And it starts with those building the rails. It didn't start with a law or a vote. It started with an idea. An idea discussed not in parliaments, but in panels. Not in campaign speeches, but in white papers. A vision for a better system, more efficient, more controlled, more aligned with long-term goals. They called it a reset. And inside the World Economic Forum, the blueprint wasn't hidden. It was presented. In presentations, in keynote speeches, in documents that anyone could download, but few actually read. The message was clear. Old systems are unstable. New systems must be built. And money, the foundation of every system, needs to evolve. Among the WEF's priorities, strengthening global cooperation between central banks, accelerating financial innovation through digital currency infrastructure, embedding sustainability and behavioral incentives into economic policy. Words like resilience, fairness, and inclusion dominated the language, but behind that vocabulary was a different architecture. Because when you look at the technical details, the direction becomes clear. In 2020, the WEF published a comprehensive guide, Central Bank Digital Currency Policymaker Toolkit. It outlined how CBDCs could be structured, what levels of data access should be granted to authorities, and how behavioral nudges could be integrated into everyday transactions. Not forced, designed. The paper didn't instruct governments to act. It offered a framework, a playbook, ready to be used by anyone willing to implement it. That's the genius of it. This wasn't a conspiracy. It was a collaboration across institutions, banks, and tech firms. One of the toolkit's most repeated ideas, interoperability. In simple terms, a network where currencies from different nations follow common rules. And who sets those rules? Entities like the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, which acts as a hub for central banks, private consulting firms that write regulatory drafts, and foundations backed by tech companies building the infrastructure layer by layer. It's not about controlling one currency. It's about standardizing the behavior of all of them. To do that, you don't need force. You need alignment. The reset isn't a switch, it's a synchronization. And slowly, that synchronization is unfolding. You can see it in the simultaneous announcements of digital currency trials across continents, in the near-identical talking points used by central bankers in different languages, in the shared timelines quietly circulating between institutions. So what does this mean for you? It means the money in your pocket may soon be mirrored by a digital version, one that knows where it goes and why. It means your access to finance could become conditional on factors beyond your income. It means that economic architecture is being reimagined, not in open debates, but in coordinated frameworks. And the blueprint? It's still available, still public, still growing. But while the documents are easy to download, the consequences are harder to decode. Because once the rails are in place, the next step is what runs on them. And that's where the next layer of the reset takes shape. The interface. They call it a wallet. But it doesn't sit in your pocket. It lives in your phone. Connected, synced, updated. And unlike the leather one you used to carry, this wallet doesn't just hold your money. It holds your identity. Digital wallets are becoming the interface for everything. Payments, identification, access to public services. They promise simplicity, but what they deliver is centralization. And that changes everything. Because when the same app processes your paycheck, verifies your documents, logs your purchases, and links to government accounts, it becomes more than convenient. It becomes unavoidable. In many countries, central banks are already collaborating with tech firms to build official wallet platforms, not just to store CBDCs, but to integrate them with programmable features, usage limits, merchant restrictions, even expiration dates. All of it wrapped in sleek design and soft language. Smart spending, automatic compliance, social benefit integration. It sounds helpful, until you realize the same infrastructure can be used to deny access, not by accident, by design. Your wallet could one day prevent you from buying products flagged as high carbon, or lock funds during a misinformation event, or require biometric verification to approve a transaction. And the more systems it connects to, the more it becomes your gatekeeper. Try opting out. Without the official wallet, you may lose access to subsidies, lose faster payment options, eventually lose access to commerce itself. That's the trap. It doesn't remove your freedom by force. It trades it for speed, for perks, for ease, until the trade becomes permanent, until the alternative no longer exists. Digital wallets are not just digital tools. They are behavioral containers. They shape what you can do, when and how. And once they become the default, choice is no longer a feature. It's a memory. But there's one more layer we haven't explored yet. What happens when these systems, money, identity, behavior, all converge? That's where the illusion of control ends and the reality of permission begins. They'll say it's optional, that you can always use cash, that digital currency is just another tool for those who want it. But the truth is quieter and more permanent. The systems being built aren't designed to coexist. They're designed to replace. Opting out sounds simple until you try. Try finding a major retailer that accepts only cash. Try navigating urban life without digital ID. Try applying for services without a smartphone-linked wallet. The more advanced the system becomes, the harder it is to live outside it. This isn't a forced transition. It's a fading alternative. One bank closes branches. Another limits withdrawals. A government offers digital incentives, discounts, faster service, exclusive access. No one tells you to comply. They just reward you for not resisting. And little by little, resistance becomes impractical. Even in countries where cash remains legal, its role is shrinking, not by policy, by design. The real trick of the opt-out illusion is this. The system doesn't block you. It just lets you block yourself. You miss one update. You don't install one app. You refuse one verification prompt. Suddenly, you're locked out, not by rule, but by omission. The world moves on, and your refusal becomes your exile. CBDCs won't need police. They won't need threats. They'll just set the terms. And if you don't agree to the terms, you simply don't participate. The reset, in this sense, is not a conspiracy. It's an ecosystem, built slowly, aligned globally, and marketed as progress. It didn't arrive with sirens. It came with updates and push notifications. The real question is no longer, can you opt out? It's, how long until there's nothing left to opt out from? Because in a world where money listens, watches, and reacts, what you're holding isn't currency anymore. It's permission. And like all permissions, it can be revoked. By the time you notice the shift, it will feel normal. The paper bills will be gone, the wallet will be silent, and the rules will be invisible. You'll tap, you'll scan, you'll comply, not because someone made you, but because the system was designed for you not to notice. And when someone asks, when did money stop being yours? there won't be a single moment to point to. Because the most powerful transformations don't announce themselves, they update quietly, while you sleep, while you scroll. This wasn't about technology, it was about trust, and who gets to define its terms. You can still hold your phone. You just might not hold the power.